Every knight died saving the alien princess, until a human mechanic tried every knight who had tried to save Princess Elira had failed. Their names were celebrated across Zyphera, carved into shining monuments and told in countless stories, yet none had returned. They had vanished into the floating fortress above the clouds, lost to the swirling anti-gravity storms that no one dared enter. Many whispered that the princess was cursed, or that only the strongest, most extraordinary beings could survive her prison. Jax, a human mechanic from Earth, had never heard of Zyphera before a malfunctioning experiment sent him spiraling into this strange new world. One moment, he was tinkering with his makeshift teleportation device in a cluttered workshop, and the next, he found himself lying in the middle of a glittering alien city, surrounded by creatures with translucent skin, glowing eyes, and limbs that bent in ways his human body could barely comprehend. At first, Jax had panicked. He had no weapons, no psychic powers, and certainly no idea how to navigate a society that moved so differently from Earth. Alien citizens passed him by, speaking in a fluid language he could not understand. Lights hummed and pulsed on towering buildings that floated above the ground, and strange machines skated along invisible tracks, carrying passengers through the air. It was breathtaking, confusing, and utterly overwhelming, but Jax had always been curious. Where others might have panicked, he observed. He noticed patterns in how the citizens moved, how their vehicles navigated the streets, and how the buildings interacted with the invisible energy fields that made them float. He quickly realized that understanding these patterns could be the key to surviving here, and maybe even finding a way back home. Days passed, and Jax learned to communicate with the locals using a mixture of gestures, drawings, and the limited words he picked up from overhearing conversations. That's when he heard the story of Princess Elira. She was young, beautiful, and clever, locked inside the floating fortress above the city. Every attempt to reach her had ended in failure. The knights who tried never returned, and their names became legends of both courage and tragedy. The city's inhabitants spoke of her with reverence, but also a kind of fearful awe. "The fortress is alive," one elder had said to Jax, voice trembling. "It protects her from the unworthy. No knight, no matter how skilled, has ever succeeded." Jax felt a strange stirring of excitement. He had never been a knight, nor had he trained in combat, but he was good with machines. He understood mechanics, patterns, and improvisation in a way that most people never did. Perhaps brute strength was not the only way to succeed. Perhaps the fortress required something different, a mind that could see its logic, its rhythm, its weaknesses. He set to work immediately, exploring the streets and markets, examining old hovercraft, drones, and gadgets left behind by previous would-be rescuers. Most of the equipment was too advanced for him to operate, but Jax had a knack for understanding things quickly. He scavenged parts from broken vehicles and cobbled together a small hovercraft, a patchwork machine powered by a combination of alien energy cells and human ingenuity. It was far from perfect, but it could fly, and that was enough to attempt a first approach. The alien citizens looked on with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "A human," one of the elders whispered to another. "Do you think he can survive where our finest knights have failed?" Jax ignored them. He knew what mattered was not what they thought, but what he could do. He studied the fortress from a distance, observing the way it shifted and rotated above the clouds. It moved unpredictably, as if alive, responding to some internal logic that no human or alien had ever deciphered. He sketched diagrams, noted the timing of its movements, and began to plan a route. Each night he returned to his workshop, a small, abandoned area in the lower city, and worked by the light of flickering energy lamps. He adjusted the hovercraft's thrusters, reinforced its hull with lightweight alloys, and even built small reconnaissance drones to scout ahead. The drones were simple, cobbled together from broken parts, but they gave him valuable information about the fortress's outer layers and the invisible energy fields that surrounded it. Meanwhile, Princess Elira watched from the fortress. She had seen countless knights arrive and fail, their courage impressive but ultimately futile. Most had relied on strength or magic, trying to overpower the fortress's defenses. None had stopped to understand it. When she noticed Jax's strange, human-made machine approaching, she tilted her head in curiosity. It moved differently from the knight's craft, slower, more cautious, yet seemingly precise. For the first time in many cycles, she wondered if this human could succeed where others had failed. The day of Jax's first flight arrived. The citizens gathered, not in expectation of success, but out of curiosity. Even the elders peered from a distance, murmuring among themselves. Jax climbed into his hovercraft, double-checking every control and every sensor. He felt a rush of excitement and fear. He wasn't strong. He wasn't magical. He had nothing but his wits and his machines. Yet somehow that felt enough. He lifted off, his patchwork hovercraft wobbling slightly at first, then stabilizing as he adjusted the thrusters. The air currents were unpredictable, and small sparks flew from the hull as the machine adapted to the alien energy fields. Below, the city shrank, and above, the fortress loomed like a gleaming crown surrounded by stormy clouds. The first obstacles were simple enough: floating platforms and rotating rings designed to test balance and timing. Jax navigated them with careful attention, using his drones to scout ahead. Each maneuver was a test of patience and observation rather than brute force. When a platform rotated too quickly, he waited, studying the rhythm, and then moved at the perfect moment. The fortress was teaching him its rules, and he was learning fast. But the deeper he went, the more complex the defenses became. Fields of invisible energy shifted in response to his movements, forcing him to think ahead. He adjusted his course, using mirrors to reflect the energy, small weights to trigger sensors at the right time, and clever makeshift grappling hooks to stabilize the hovercraft when it threatened to drift off course. Each success felt like a small victory, and he could sense the fortress watching, testing him as much as he was testing it. From above, Princess Elira observed silently. She had never seen anyone approach her with such care, such patience, such intelligence. Unlike the knights who had tried to fight or bypass the fortress, the humans seemed to be communicating with it, understanding it, responding to its logic. She felt a flicker of hope that someone might finally reach her without succumbing to the storm. Hours passed. Jax faced obstacle after obstacle, each more intricate than the last. Yet with each challenge, he improvised, adapted, and moved forward. He was not a hero in the traditional sense, but he was proving that courage and cleverness could rival any sword or psychic power. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the clouds in hues of pink and gold, Jax reached the edge of the fortress's outer defenses. The final barrier was a swirling vortex of energy, spinning with unpredictable speed. Knights had tried to pass through it and were swept away, never to be seen again. Jax's heart pounded. This was the ultimate test, and he knew one mistake could cost him dearly. He took a deep breath, reviewing every calculation, every observation. He activated his drones, sending them ahead to map the vortex's rotation. He adjusted his hovercraft, shields, aligned mirrors to redirect energy currents, and slowly, carefully, entered the spinning field. The machine shuddered, sparks flying, but Jax's steady hands guided it through. Step by step, he moved deeper, learning the rhythm, anticipating the shifts, and finally, with a small burst of energy, he emerged on the other side. He had made it further than any knight before him. For the first time, a human had approached the princess without being swept away. From the fortress windows, Elira leaned forward, her eyes wide with amazement. She had watched heroes fall for countless cycles, but this human, this mechanic from another world, had moved not with strength or magic, but with intelligence, creativity, and courage. She smiled, a rare and genuine smile, and whispered to herself, "Perhaps the legends were wrong. Perhaps this one will succeed." Below, the city held its breath, unaware of the full significance of what had just happened. Jax hovered outside the fortress, scanning the path ahead. There was more to overcome, yes, but he had proven the impossible was not impossible. He had shown that even in a world of superpowered knights and ancient legends, a single human could make a difference. And for the first time in many cycles, hope stirred, not just in Princess Elira, but in the hearts of all who had believed only the mighty could succeed. Jax hovered just outside the fortress, his heart pounding with excitement and nervous energy. The swirling vortex he had passed through was only the beginning. The fortress itself seemed to pulse and shift with a life of its own. Massive towers rotated, bridges appeared and disappeared, and strange energy patterns danced along its surface. No knight had ever managed to navigate this maze, yet here he was, a human mechanic relying on nothing but his wits and his makeshift hovercraft. He activated his drones again, sending them to scout ahead. Tiny lights zipped through gaps in the fortress walls, returning data on shifting platforms and invisible energy fields. Jack studied the patterns carefully, making notes in his small holographic interface. "It's like a puzzle," he muttered to himself. "A really big, really complicated puzzle," he smiled. The thought excited him more than fear. Inside the fortress, Princess Elira watched his progress with increasing fascination. Most who had tried to reach her had been brash, relying on strength or speed, and each had failed spectacularly. But Jax moved differently. He observed, calculated, and adapted. Every movement seemed thoughtful, deliberate. He respected the fortress rather than fighting it, and for the first time in many cycles, Elira felt a flicker of hope that someone could reach her safely. The first challenge within the fortress was a series of floating platforms, suspended in midair with no visible support. They rotated and shifted, some too far apart to jump. Knights had tried to leap across, many falling into the abyss below. Jax, however, approached slowly, using his hovercraft stabilizers to hover just above the first platform. He deployed small magnetic anchors, which latched onto hidden metal strips along the platform's undersides. With careful timing, he propelled himself and the hovercraft from one platform to the next, adjusting as the structures rotated. Elira couldn't help but gasp. "He isn't rushing," she whispered. "He's thinking, he's learning the rhythm." She leaned closer to the window, watching as he approached the fortress's central tower. That tower, she knew, contained the chamber where she was held. It was protected by layers of shifting energy fields designed to stop anyone who tried to enter. No knight had ever reached this point without triggering the defenses. Jack studied the energy fields. They pulsed in cycles, alternating between visible and invisible states. He realized that brute force would never work. Instead, he used his drones to map the invisible patterns, identifying gaps where the field weakened briefly. He adjusted mirrors on the hovercraft to redirect the energy, creating small windows of opportunity for passage. Step by step, he moved closer, his mind focused entirely on the puzzle before him. The fortress seemed to respond to him. Sections shifted unexpectedly, almost as if testing him. He adjusted quickly, using his engineering instincts to predict movements based on patterns he had observed. It was not magic that guided him, but logic and observation, tools he had always relied on back on Earth. As he reached the final barrier, a large rotating gate of energy surrounded the central tower. It spun unpredictably, and any miscalculation could send the hovercraft crashing into the walls. Jax paused. He considered his options, then remembered a small invention he had made for Earth, a gyroscopic stabilizer. He modified it for his hovercraft, allowing it to remain steady despite the spinning energy currents. He took a deep breath, activated the stabilizer, and moved through the rotating gate with perfect timing. Inside the central tower, Elira watched in amazement as the human finally arrived. He hovered for a moment, scanning the interior, then landed gently on a platform just below the chamber where she waited. She could see the determination in his eyes, the focus, and the intelligence guiding every movement. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jax called out, his voice steady but tinged with awe. "Princess Elira, I've come to help. I've studied the fortress and I think I understand it. If you'll let me, I can get you out safely." Elira hesitated. She had been locked away for cycles, protected by a fortress that had claimed countless heroes. She had learned to doubt those who claimed they could save her. But there was something different about this human. He did not radiate arrogance or recklessness. Instead, he approached her with respect and intelligence. Slowly, she nodded. "Very well," she said. "I will trust you, but be careful. This fortress is clever." Jax smiled. "I've learned from it," he said simply. "It's been teaching me every step of the way." Together, they began the next phase of the journey. Elira followed Jax as he guided the hovercraft through the central chamber. The walls shifted and moved, forming obstacles that seemed impossible to navigate, but Jax was ready. Using small pulleys, stabilizers, and his drones, he created temporary bridges and safe paths. He explained each move to Elira, and she assisted, learning to anticipate the fortress's logic alongside him. They reached a section where the floor itself rotated in a complex pattern, designed to throw intruders off balance. Elira struggled at first, but Jax guided her through, holding her hand when necessary, offering encouragement with a calm voice. Step by step, they moved forward, a team united by intelligence and trust rather than strength or power. As they neared the exit, the fortress unleashed its final challenge, a corridor of energy beams that crisscrossed in unpredictable patterns. Knights had been stopped here countless times. Jax examined the beams carefully, then noticed something others had missed. The beams pulsed in a repeating sequence, creating brief moments of safe passage. Timing would be everything. He instructed Elira to watch his movements closely. Using his hovercraft's agility and the stabilizers he had installed, he wove through the beams with precision, marking the patterns in his mind. Then he guided Elira step by step, waiting for the exact moment when the beams allowed her to pass safely. Heart-pounding, they reached the other side without a scratch. Elira laughed softly, a sound of pure relief and joy. "I never thought I would see the day," she said. "No knight has ever made it this far, and yet here we are." Jax shrugged modestly. "I'm not a knight," he said. "I just paid attention, I listened, I watched. Sometimes that's enough." They emerged from the fortress into the open sky, the city below bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. Citizens looked up in awe as the floating fortress shimmered and receded, its defenses retreating as if conceding to the humans' ingenuity. Word spread quickly. A human, not a knight, had succeeded where countless others had failed. Back on solid ground, Jax and Elira stepped down from the hovercraft. The princess looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You've shown me that courage isn't only about strength," she said. "It's about thinking, learning, and never giving up. You've changed everything." Jax grinned. "I guess humans have their own kind of heroism," he said. "Not flashy, not magical, just practical." The city erupted in celebration, not with cheering for battle or victory over an enemy, but for brilliance, creativity, and perseverance. Citizens gathered to marvel at Jax's machines, asking questions and seeking guidance. Alien engineers and scholars studied his methods, realizing that human ingenuity could complement their own advanced technology in ways they had never imagined. Princess Elira walked beside Jax, her hand brushing his as they moved through the crowd. She had always been admired for her wisdom and kindness, but now she understood something new. Strength alone was not the measure of a hero. Intelligence, creativity, and courage in the face of the unknown were just as powerful. The elders approached, bowing deeply. "You have shown us a new path," one said. "Perhaps we have been wrong to value only strength and power. Perhaps wisdom and cleverness can guide us further than brute force ever could." Jax nodded, humbled but proud. "Every problem has a solution," he said. "Sometimes it just takes a different perspective to see it." Elira smiled at him. "Then together, we will explore those new paths. With humans and aliens working side by side, I believe our world will reach heights we never dreamed possible." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city, Jax realized he had done more than save a princess. He had changed an entire society's way of thinking. The fortress, once feared and impenetrable, had become a symbol not of danger, but of challenge overcome. And he, a simple human mechanic, had shown that courage and intelligence could triumph where power alone could not. In the days that followed, Jax helped repair and improve alien technology, teaching and learning in equal measure. Elira worked beside him, and together they discovered ways to blend human ingenuity with alien science. Stories of their adventure spread across Scifi, inspiring new generations to look beyond brute strength, to value creativity, and to believe that even the smallest, most unexpected heroes could make a difference. And so, the legend of the human mechanic who saved Princess Elira became a story told for cycles to come, not of knights or magic, but of cleverness, courage, and the extraordinary power of a human mind. Scifi had changed forever, not because of swords or psychic powers, but because one human had dared to try and dared to succeed. The city of Scifi had changed. Once it had been a place where strength and power defined heroes, and the failure of countless knights had cast a shadow of fear over its people. Now, with Jax and Princess Elira demonstrating that intelligence, ingenuity, and determination could overcome the impossible, a new spirit of hope filled the streets. Citizens worked side by side, experimenting with machines, exploring new technologies, and learning to approach problems with patience and creativity. Jax had quickly become a figure of curiosity and admiration. The humans' approach to problem-solving, methodical, analytical, inventive, was unlike anything the alien society had seen. But Jax remained humble, reminding everyone that he was no hero. "I just look at things differently," he said with a smile, wiping grease from his hands as he adjusted the controls on a floating transport vehicle. "The fortress taught me everything. You just have to pay attention." Elira, for her part, had grown fond of the human mechanic. She admired his patience, his cleverness, and his unwavering determination. But she also knew that new challenges were coming. The floating fortress had been the first test, a trial by design, and the city had only just begun to understand what other secrets lay hidden in the skies above Zyphera. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Jax was tinkering with a small drone he had modified for long-range scouting. Elira approached, her expression thoughtful. "The fortress was only the beginning," she said. "There are other regions in the sky, floating islands and drifting laboratories that have been abandoned for centuries. They hold technology that could change our world, but they are dangerous to explore. No one has dared to go there, not even the bravest knights." Jax looked up, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Dangerous how?" he asked. "Unstable energy fields, automated defenses, and unpredictable weather patterns," Elira explained. "Some of the islands are said to be cursed, though I suspect that's just legend." She smiled. "But I believe someone with the right mind could navigate them safely." Jax grinned. "Sounds like another puzzle," he said, running his fingers along the drone's controls. "I like puzzles." And so their next adventure began. Using maps drawn from scattered reports and the drones Jax had improved, they planned an expedition to a floating island far beyond the city limits. The journey would test both human ingenuity and alien knowledge. Jax designed modifications for the hovercraft, installing enhanced stabilizers, energy shields, and sensors to detect shifts in the island's gravitational fields. Elira gathered supplies and coordinates, providing insight into the patterns and legends surrounding the islands. The morning they departed, the city gathered to watch. Citizens cheered as the human and the princess lifted into the sky, navigating their hovercraft with careful precision. This time it was not a rescue mission but an exploration, a quest for knowledge. Jax and Elira felt the weight of expectation, but they also felt excitement and freedom. The world below seemed smaller now, and the skies above promised adventure. The first hours were smooth. Jax maneuvered the hovercraft through clear air currents, scanning for floating debris and energy anomalies. Elira assisted, marking potential hazards and noting points of interest. The floating island appeared on the horizon like a shimmering jewel, surrounded by swirling clouds and shifting light. Its surface was jagged, with rocky spires jutting into the sky and strange structures that suggested it had once been inhabited by an advanced civilization. As they approached, the air grew unstable. Energy fields pulsed unpredictably, causing the hovercraft to tilt and sway. Jax's stabilizers worked overtime, and he guided the craft carefully, responding to each shift with precise adjustments. Elira marveled at his skill. "You make it look easy," she said, gripping the side of the hovercraft as it wobbled. "It's all about observation," Jax replied, eyes scanning the field. "Predict the patterns and you stay one step ahead." They landed on a plateau near the island's center, the ground vibrating slightly beneath them. The structures around them were ancient, with surfaces covered in alien symbols that pulsed faintly with energy. Jax's curiosity ignited. He immediately began examining the mechanisms, running his hands over panels and consoles. "These are old systems," he muttered, "but they're still active. Whoever built this knew what they were doing." Elira joined him, examining the symbols. "I've studied some of these," she said. "They're part of a network of islands, each controlling certain energy flows. If we understand them, we could harness power that the city has never seen before." The two worked together, combining human ingenuity and alien knowledge. Jax rewired circuits, calibrated sensors, and tested energy conduits. Elira guided him through the complex network of symbols, explaining the logic behind each pattern. Slowly, the island began to respond. Lights flickered in sequence, platforms shifted into alignment, and previously inaccessible areas opened for exploration. Hours passed, and their teamwork strengthened. Jax and Elira discovered rooms filled with ancient machinery, holographic displays, projecting star maps and energy flows. They realized that this island was a hub, part of a network designed to stabilize the floating islands across Zyphera. If they could understand its mechanisms, they could prevent natural disasters, improve transportation, and expand the city's energy capabilities. But exploration brought challenges. Some areas were unstable, with floating walkways that shifted unpredictably. Others contained energy barriers that pulsed in complex patterns. Jax approached each problem like a puzzle, using his drones to map the area, mirrors to redirect energy, and temporary supports to stabilize platforms. Elira assisted, timing her movements with his instructions and providing insights based on her knowledge of alien energy flows. At one point, they encountered a massive chamber where energy currents converged in a swirling vortex. Legends had claimed such places were traps, designed to overwhelm intruders with chaotic energy. Jax examined the currents, noticing that they followed a subtle rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Using his hovercraft stabilizers and a network of small drones, he created a controlled path through the vortex. Step by step, he guided Elira, and together they passed safely to the other side. Elira laughed with relief and admiration. "No knight could have done this," she said, "but you've shown that courage and cleverness together can overcome anything." Jack smiled, brushing sweat from his brow. "Sometimes all it takes is patience and observation," he said. "You don't always need strength to solve a problem." As they explored deeper, they discovered a chamber filled with devices that controlled energy flow between the floating islands. Jax's eyes widened with excitement. "This is incredible," he whispered. "With this, we could stabilize the entire network. The city would be safer and travel between islands could become routine." Elira nodded. "And no one has touched these controls in centuries," she said. "We are the first to understand them fully." Together, they spent hours analyzing the systems, rewiring circuits, and mapping energy flows. Jax's mechanical skills allowed him to repair and adapt ancient devices, while Elira's understanding of alien technology ensured they did not trigger any dangerous feedback loops. By the end of the day, they had achieved what seemed impossible. The island systems were fully functional, responding to their guidance and creating a stable energy field across the region. As night fell, the floating island glowed softly with a new, steady light. Jax and Elira stood together, looking out over the edge, watching the city below shimmer in the distance. The people of Zyphera would never fully understand the risks they had taken or the cleverness required to overcome them, but that did not matter. They had proven that human ingenuity combined with alien knowledge could achieve greatness beyond what anyone had imagined. Elira turned to Jax. "You've changed everything," she said. "Not just for me, but for all of Zyphera. We now know that cleverness and courage are as important as strength, perhaps even more so." Jax shrugged modestly. "I just do what I do," he said. "Look, the fortress taught me something important. Every problem has a solution, but you have to see it from the right angle." That's all. The two returned to the city the next morning, greeted with awe and admiration. Citizens crowded the streets, eager to hear their story and witness the results of their exploration. The elders, once skeptical, now looked at Jax with respect, recognizing that humans had much to teach them. Engineers, scientists, and inventors sought his guidance, hoping to learn from his methods. Elira and Jax began a new project, combining human ingenuity with alien technology to improve life across Zyphera. They worked tirelessly, repairing ancient systems, designing new transportation networks, and creating energy grids that linked the floating islands safely. Their collaboration became a symbol of what could be achieved when cultures and ideas merged, a lesson in creativity, patience, and courage. Months passed, and stories of Jax's ingenuity spread beyond the city. Other human travelers who arrived on Zyphera were welcomed with curiosity and respect, inspired by his example. The floating fortress that had once seemed impossible to navigate became a training ground, a place for thinkers and problem solvers rather than warriors. Princess Elira, now a leader admired for her wisdom, often reflected on the journey that had begun with a human mechanic daring to try where knights had failed. And through it all, Jax remained humble, always learning, always tinkering, always curious. He had come to Zyphera by accident, but he had found a purpose far greater than he had ever imagined. His story, along with Elira's guidance, became a legend, not of strength or battle, but of cleverness, courage, and the extraordinary power of human ingenuity. The skies of Zyphera were no longer a place of fear. They were a place of exploration, wonder, and opportunity. And in those skies, the human mechanic and the princess moved forward together, ready for whatever challenges awaited, proving that intelligence and perseverance could triumph over any obstacle, no matter how impossible it seemed. Months had passed since Jax and Princess Elira had stabilized the floating islands and transformed Zyphera's approach to technology. The city below the clouds thrived with new energy grids, innovative transport systems, and a spirit of collaboration that combined human creativity with alien knowledge. But adventure, as always, called to Jax. While the city celebrated, his mind was already wandering to the skies beyond, where mysteries remained. Elira noticed the spark in Jax's eyes one morning as he examined a series of newly discovered energy conduits on the outskirts of the city. "You're restless again," she said, smiling. "There are still puzzles out there you want to solve, aren't there?" Jax laughed lightly. "I can't help it. There are more floating islands, more systems we don't understand, and some of them, well, they're just waiting to be explored." Elira studied him thoughtfully. She admired his endless curiosity, the way he approached every problem with patience, observation, and ingenuity. But this time, she sensed that the challenges would be unlike anything they had faced before. These islands were far from the city, drifting into regions with energy storms so unpredictable they had been marked off-limits by generations of scholars. "Then we must prepare carefully," she said. "We'll need supplies, equipment, and a strategy. And we cannot rely on strength alone. The islands respond to intelligence, not power." Jax nodded, already making mental lists of the tools and modifications their hovercraft would need. He sketched diagrams, ran simulations, and began assembling drones capable of long-range scanning and environmental mapping. Elira coordinated with the city's engineers, ensuring that their equipment could withstand the unusual energy flows of the remote islands. The day of departure arrived. Citizens gathered once again, though this time not for a rescue or demonstration, but to witness the bold exploration of the unknown. Jax and Elira lifted into the sky, hovercraft gliding smoothly above the city and into the swirling clouds beyond. The air was thicker here, and energy currents shifted unpredictably, requiring constant adjustment. Jax relied on his stabilizers and sensors, while Elira monitored energy fluctuations and charted a safe course. Hours into the flight, they approached the first of the remote islands. Unlike the islands closer to the city, this one floated in isolation, surrounded by dense, rolling clouds and streaks of faint energy that danced unpredictably. Its surface was jagged, with crystalline spires protruding into the sky and strange metallic structures that seemed to hum with residual power. "This one looks ancient," Elira said, awe in her voice. "The legends speak of islands like this, lost to time. They were once hubs of research and invention, but their knowledge has been forgotten." Jax grinned. "Sounds like the perfect place for a puzzle," he said, adjusting a control on the hovercraft. "Let's see what secrets it holds." They landed carefully on a plateau near the island's center. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly, as if the island itself were alive. Elira led the way to a large, circular structure at the plateau's heart. Symbols and circuits covered its surface, glowing faintly with energy. Jax immediately knelt to examine them, tracing lines with his fingers and muttering observations under his breath. "These symbols, they're like a map of energy flows," he said. "If we can understand the pattern, we could control the island systems, but it's tricky. The currents are unstable and interact in unpredictable ways." Elira studied the display beside him. "We'll need to work together," she said. "I can interpret the symbols and the logic behind the design. You can modify and repair the systems to respond to our instructions. Step by step, we can bring it under control." And so they began. Hours passed as they tested circuits, calibrated sensors, and traced energy flows across the island. Jax built small drones to explore chambers and platforms that were too unstable to navigate on foot. Each drone transmitted real-time data back to the hovercraft, helping them map the island's interior and understand its complex network of systems. They encountered numerous challenges. Platforms shifted unexpectedly, energy conduits pulsed in confusing sequences, and some rooms contained mechanisms that reset themselves if tampered with incorrectly. But Jax remained calm, analyzing each problem, improvising solutions, and adjusting his approach. Elira observed patterns, deciphered symbols, and guided him through each obstacle. Their teamwork became seamless, a blend of human ingenuity and alien knowledge. At one point, they reached a chamber filled with floating crystals that pulsed with energy. These crystals controlled the island's environmental systems, regulating airflow, energy distribution, and gravity in localized areas. One wrong move could destabilize the chamber, sending platforms drifting into dangerous positions. Jack studied the patterns. "It's like a dance," he said, adjusting his drones to reflect light and energy from the crystals, creating a temporary path across the chamber. "We have to move with it, not against it." Elira nodded, following his lead as they carefully navigated the chamber, stepping across platforms that rose and fell with the pulsing energy. Each movement required patience, timing, and trust in one another. For hours, they worked together, slowly bringing the chamber under control. When the last crystal aligned with the others, a low hum resonated through the chamber, and the energy stabilized. They stepped back, breathing heavily but smiling. "We did it," Elira said, her eyes shining. "No one has ever controlled this chamber before." Jack shrugged, brushing sweat from his brow. "We just figured out the pattern," he said. "Sometimes that's all it takes." As they explored further, they discovered a vast hall filled with ancient machinery and holographic displays. The technology was far older than anything they had encountered near the city, and it contained knowledge that could revolutionize life across Zyphera. Maps of energy flows, designs for transportation systems, and even recordings of alien scientists discussing their experiments all lay waiting to be understood. Jax's excitement grew. "We have to document all of this," he said. "If we can bring this knowledge back, it could help the entire planet," Elira agreed. "And it will also teach us humility," she added. "These were beings far more advanced than anyone alive today, yet their work was abandoned, forgotten. We must learn carefully and respect the systems they left behind." As night fell, the island glowed with a soft, steady light, illuminating their work. Jax and Elira set up temporary living quarters in one of the more stable chambers, sharing meals and reviewing data from their drones. Despite the challenges, both felt exhilaration and fulfillment. They were explorers, not just of geography but of knowledge, and every step brought new discoveries. The following morning, they encountered a new challenge, a network of floating platforms that formed a maze in 3 dimensions. Some platforms rotated, others shifted up and down, and energy beams created obstacles that could not be passed without precise timing. Knights from the city had long ago avoided such areas, believing them too dangerous. Jack studied the maze carefully, deploying drones to map the structure and detect safe pathways. "It's like a puzzle box," he said, tracing lines of energy and movement. "If we understand the rules, we can navigate it safely." Elira observed alongside him, guiding his calculations and noting patterns that his drones had detected. Step by step, they moved through the maze, timing their movements with precision and adjusting for unexpected shifts. Hours passed, but with patience and intelligence, they reached the center, where a control console waited, ancient but still functional. Jax worked quickly, repairing circuits, recalibrating sensors, and bringing the maze under control. As the final platforms aligned, a series of energy bridges extended outward, revealing paths to other sections of the island. Elira's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Your mind sees solutions where others see obstacles," she said. Jax smiled modestly. "It's all about paying attention," he said. "Watching, thinking, and trying different approaches, that's how you solve any problem." Together, they continued their exploration, uncovering hidden laboratories, energy storage chambers, and communication devices that linked this island to others far across the skies. Each discovery expanded their understanding and provided new ways to improve the city below. They realized that by mastering the systems of this island, they could connect the floating islands into a stable, energy-efficient network, ensuring safety, growth, and opportunity for all of Zyphera. By the end of their expedition, Jax and Elira had accomplished what no one had before. They had explored the ancient island, stabilized its systems, and unlocked knowledge that would benefit generations. Citizens of Zyphera would soon reap the rewards of their ingenuity and teamwork, and the story of a human mechanic and a brilliant princess solving impossible puzzles would inspire countless others. As they prepared to return to the city, Elira looked at Jax with gratitude. "You've done more than I ever imagined," she said. "You've shown me and the entire planet that courage, intelligence, and perseverance can achieve the impossible." Jax shrugged, a humble smile on his face. "I just pay attention," he said, "but together we can do even more. There are always more puzzles, more challenges, and I can't wait to see what we discover next." The two lifted into the sky once more, the floating island behind them glowing softly as it settled into a stable orbit. Below, Zyphera awaited, ready to embrace the innovations and discoveries their explorers would bring. And in the skies above, Jax and Elira soared, proving that human ingenuity, courage, and collaboration could overcome any challenge, even in a world far beyond Earth, filled with mysteries, energy, and possibilities beyond imagination.